All right, out of all of our Renaissance artworks, there's three that we're going to talk about that are from the High Renaissance. There's The Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci, Sistine Chapel ceiling and the altar wall frescoes by Michelangelo, and School of Athens by Raphael. So we're first going to talk about The Last Supper. Leonardo da Vinci, if you want to just say da Vinci, that works as well. This is 1494 to 98. And then the materials here, this is different than what we've seen before. This is oil and tempera. All right, if you want to label who all of the people are, you can use the photograph from us reenacting this last year. Here's probably some proper spellings of who the apostles are. So you have Bartholomew, I'm reading from left to right. Bartholomew, James Minor, Andrew, Peter, John, not Mary. Don't forget Judas. Judas is kind of in front of Peter. And then in the center you have Jesus. And then you have doubting Thomas with his finger up. James Major, Philip, Matthew, Thaddeus, and Simon. These are the apostles or Jesus's disciples. All right, what the Last Supper is depicting, and you can summarize this, they're actually all sitting down having a Passover Seder, which we learned about Passover Seders when we talked about the Golden Haggadah. And it's this time when Jesus reveals his impending death to his disciples. He's instructing them to drink wine, which represents his blood, and eat bread, which represents his body. And this lays the foundation of the Eucharist that Catholics reenact when they go to church services. He also reveals one of his disciples will betray him, and everybody is shocked. So we're going to look at their shocked reactions. All right, context. What I want you to think about when you look at this is, why does it look so tattered? Why does it look, the condition, why does it look like this? Like, what led to that? And I think there's several factors that happened here. The worst were the materials. So Da Vinci is experimenting with his materials, and he's mixing oil and tempera, and he's mixing these two mediums and then applying it to dry plaster. So how is that different than fresco? We looked at other fresco paintings, and fresco means fresh. So think about fresh plaster. You're applying fresh plaster to the wall and then painting your pigment on top of the plaster, and it's adhering to the plaster. With Da Vinci's technique, it is not adhering to the wall. So there's no fusion with the pigment and the plaster as there is in a normal fresco. So after he completed it, it began to flake off, like during his lifetime. Other things happened too, so we can summarize this, but the ceiling of this place was also bombed off during World War II, leaving it exposed for several months. They had it tarped, but having it tarped is not going to keep, the inside safe from the humidity, the pollution, also lots of crowding tourists and poor restoration. Everything led to the ruin of this painting. Also, where are Jesus's feet? Do you see what happened there? In the 17th century, a door was cut into the mural wall at his feet. They just cut out a piece of the wall. Just Da Vinci's mural, took it away, gone. So what you're actually looking at, 40% of this is Leonardo da Vinci's work, 20% of this is gone, like flaked off, and then 40% of it is other artists restoring it, trying to keep this here. All right, we don't really need to know the size, but what you do need to know is, because this is so large, the figures are actually life-sized. So this is important because the function of this place was for monks to dine here. So because the characters on the wall are life-sized, it actually helped create this illusion of dining with these holy, divine people. All right, linear perspective. How is Da Vinci using linear perspective? You guys know what linear perspective is? What is that? So linear perspective is where all of the diagonal or orthogonal lines are kind of leading to a vanishing point. So how is Da Vinci using that to create the composition? How do we know these figures are divine? How is this an example of the Renaissance? Okay, so with linear perspective, if you follow all of the orthogonal lines or all of those leading diagonal lines, the vanishing point is right to Jesus. It's right on his head. So all the orthogonal lines point to J's head. The linear perspective then continues into the room. That's why I gave you that image down below on your note page of the room. And then this gives the monks the real illusion that they are dining with them. All right, function, this was painted in the refectory, which just means the dining room for the monks at Santa Maria delle Grazie in Milan. I'm sure I butchered the pronunciation of that. That's okay. Commissioned by the Duke of Milan, so this is not commissioned by the Pope. All right, how do we know these figures are divine? This is actually the first time we've seen holy figures without their halos. Right, with Fra Filippo Lippi, he was like giving us a little hint of a halo, but the halo was still there. So now the halo is completely gone. So what he did was he grouped the apostles together in threes. So you have 3, 3, Jesus, 3, 3. Where else do we see 3? Yeah, the windows. So anytime you see 3 in Christianity, it's referring to the Holy Trinity. You have the Spirit, what is it? Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Got it. And I know this is really hard to see, but the light coming from back behind Jesus, back there, there's also a triumphal arch over the doorway. So this is almost alluding to a halo. And he has a holy light behind him. Lucky guy. And then the body of Jesus himself creates a triangle. So again, anytime you have 3, triangle, it's the Holy Trinity. All right, so how does this exemplify the Renaissance? What makes this an example of high Renaissance? So this is a really good example of humanism. He's creating a holy artwork, right? Divine, holy people, but he's making them look very natural and like normal, everyday human people. He's not giving them the halo anymore. They're not that regal frontality that we would see with Gothic characters. He's not using the obvious symbols of divinity. Okay, so what is he reaching for? Can you see Jesus's hands? So on one side, he's reaching for wine. On the other side, he's reaching for bread. You can see where he's reaching for wine. There's a bowl here. So this is him initiating the ritual of the Eucharist. You've got these 3 on the left. I'm not going to talk about them. But then next to them, you have Judas. And what is Judas reaching for? Whoop, right down here. Same bowl as Jesus. So Jesus says at this dinner, it's like a prophecy. He's saying the person who dips with me will be the one to betray me. And then everybody is shocked, except for Judas, who is just reaching for the bowl of wine. And then you can't tell at all, but Judas is holding something that would also foreshadow what is happening. So he's holding his bag of money. He gets paid 30 silvers by the Romans for betraying Jesus, which is why portrayals of Judas in hell, it's like he's hanging by his money bags. Also because he hung himself after this. Oh, Peter, who is right behind Judas, is holding a knife. And again, that's an example of foreshadowing, like foretelling what is going to happen the next day. So the next day, he fights off a Roman guard when they are trying to arrest Jesus, and he cuts off the ear of the Roman guard. There he is doing that. That kind of reminded me of that one movie where Vince Vaughn cuts off the cop's ear. Really good movie. Really good song. Really good song. Okay. You've got these 3. We're going to skip them. Boop. You've got Thomas giving Jesus the finger. What's going on there? It's not the middle finger, but it's a really awkward looking pose, right? So this is another example of foreshadowing. So Thomas is pointing up, asking, is this God's plan? And he's foreshadowing, you don't need to write all this, by the way, how after Jesus' resurrection, he had to feel the wound of Christ to believe it was him. So this is where there's a saying, not a peeping Tom, but it's a doubting Thomas. Hang on. A doubting Thomas means, it alludes to this, like not being for sure that Jesus is Jesus. And ew, there he is touching his wound. Ew. I'm pretty sure this is painted by Caravaggio, who we're going to study when we go Baroque pretty soon. All right, so here's other examples of the Last Supper. So even though the one by Da Vinci is the most famous, everybody's recognized it, we've all seen it at some point, there have been other depictions of the Last Supper before Da Vinci. But what Da Vinci has done differently than these guys, he's breaking this convention by placing Judas on the same side as Jesus. So here we have Judas kind of outcast. Here we have Judas outcast, sitting on the other side of everybody. There's us. She should be giving her the finger. I can't really tell though. All right, Da Vinci's also known for other works. He's really famous for his sketchbooks where he'd study a lot of anatomy, have a lot of notes. He would create drawings of tanks and parachutes and all these inventions that hadn't been invented yet. He studied a lot of like dead bodies, cadavers, to be able to understand anatomy. The Vitruvian Man is on the bottom right, inspired by the Roman architect Vitruvius. And he's also kind of known for the Mona Lisa, which everybody always asks why it's so famous. And I really believe it's because of it being stolen for a while from the museum. What's interesting about this is that the Mona Lisa was so small. You don't have to write this, you guys. The Mona Lisa was so small, it's like mobility arts. You could take it with you. And he actually never wanted to part from this painting. So when he left Italy, he traveled, he went to France, he took the painting with him, and then he died. So that's one of the reasons of why this painting is in France. It became a part of the French royal collection, and they trimmed it about an inch on either side. Thanks, guys. So it is now at the Louvre in Paris, which is the most famous and largest museum in the world. And then there was a theft from the Louvre in 1911, became a big scandal, and it made the painting incredibly famous overnight. The guy who stole it then tried to resell it later to an art dealer who recognized it, and he got in trouble. The guy said he was trying to return it to Italy, and he was a patriot, and it was stolen by Napoleon. So he's really a good guy, just trying to return this painting. All right, Sistine Chapel is next. Wait, time out. I'm gonna show a little clip. Time out. Okay, short clip saying it better than how I said it.
Like a tank, flying machine, and a parachute. In 1482, Leonardo went to Milan. He painted his famous mural, The Last Supper, on the wall of a monastery. He chose to portray the emotional moment when Jesus predicts that one of the apostles will betray him, and the betrayer will take bread at the same time he does. The apostles react in varying degrees of surprise and horror, except for Judas, who, distracted by the commotion, reaches for a piece of bread. Leonardo used perspective lines as a compositional device that leads the eye to Jesus' face, the calm sinner in the chaos. Though the Last Supper had been painted by others, Leonardo's version was the first to depict the apostles as real people acting or reacting like real people. Now we